Oh God, help us as we unpack what you have said to us in Scripture and what is going on in our own lives. Among Christians, and even Catholic Christians, opinions vary about abortion. So I don't know how gratified or sad you're feeling after Friday's Supreme Court decision, but I found the reflections of Reverend Mary Ludy. She's a minister and an author and a fellow seeker of God's will, and I found her words to be helpful. She writes this: I don't know if you're heading out to protest, raising a celebratory toast, or weeping on the phone with a terrified friend. I don't know if the bottom has fallen out of your life or whether your prayers have been answered. I don't know whether any of us have yet to fully comprehend what is happening in this land, but I know this. In ways that really count, today, so shattering for many, is no different from any other day in which we awake to life. Like every day, even days laden with evil, it's a gift from God, a mercy. It's a precious clearing in which to meet the steadiness that undergirds each change and chance. And in that meeting, to know again that no matter what befalls our fragile lives, our fragile world, God will not fail to hold us night and morning. God will not fail to will and work the good of all creation. God will not fail to be God. Which is not to paper over the dangerous divide among us, nor to deny the deep foreboding that stirs in the attentive heart. It's only to bend the knee and pray, to bow the head and confess a bedrock, the unchanging reality in whose heart we live. It's only to say there is at least one sure thing. It's a place to begin and to begin again. I found Mary's words especially helpful when I looked at today's readings. In the gospel, Jesus begins again. This gospel we read today is the moment when his ministry moves from homeland in Galilee and begins the long journey to Jerusalem. He begins the journey from known to unknown, from charted to uncharted territory. Luke's going to have a lot to say in the coming weeks in this narrative about this journey. 10 chapters worth will be in this from now until the end of October. And he also has much to say in this, today's reading, this short beginning. For example, Jesus immediately encounters hostile territory. The Samaritans and the Jews had a long history of animosity, so it's not surprising that Jesus wasn't welcome there. James and John, however, present for us a model of discernment that we might do well to emulate, because what they do is they turn to Jesus and ask him, "What is your will?" They say, "Rabbi, is it your will that we rain down fire from heaven to consume them?" Before they act, they ask. And having paused to discern Jesus' will and received the calming influence of Jesus, they journeyed on. And in this uncharted territory that we find ourselves in, some actions genuinely do speak truth to power and others do not. So pausing to discern God's will is an important and necessary tool for the journey. Later, Luke will tell us about the Good Samaritan and the one grateful leper who is a Samaritan. So in the midst of uncertainty, we turn to the one who is our refuge, as the psalm says, and we pause there. Luke reminds us not to be distracted, but to rather remain resolutely determined in our focus on Jesus. And this is difficult. How are we to discern the difference between righteous anger versus distraction based on ego clinging? Paul's letter to the Galatians suggests that it might have everything to do with our motivation to love our neighbor. And it's only when we pause that discernment about that is possible. It's impressive to me that Luke normalizes our feelings of uncertainty and unmooring, because he says that Jesus, who is our navigator, our bellwether, also dwelt in the vague world of sojourn, of questioning, of doubt, because Jesus says, foxes have dens and birds have nests. But we, for whom the only constant is change, have no steadiness except for God and God's love. And then Luke's final paragraph today warns us against righteous distraction, because obligations of family and work are so important. They're important social constructs. They're not to be poo-pooed. Yet, even there, we still turn to God and Jesus for discernment. Even there, we ask whether God is calling us in a different direction. Even there, we pause in the new day, a precious clearing in which to meet the steadiness that undergirds each change and chance. And in that meeting, to know again that no matter what befalls our fragile lives, God will not fail to hold us night and morning. God will not fail to be God.